From disturbing reports of dead bodies left in carnival funhouses to terrifying mutant mermaids, here are 9 of the most horrifying recent discoveries from all over the world. Number 9. Dead train robber in Carnival. Elmer McCurdy was a lowlife bandit, thief, and train robber in the early 1900s. Back in the days of the Old West, this man robbed a train of a total of $43 and several jugs of whiskey. It's a lot to risk to gain such a small amount, but that was the way outlaws behaved in those days. Soon after, he was shot to death by a vigilante group of local citizens, and his body was embalmed. This is where things get weird. His corpse was put on display in a funeral parlor as a morbid attraction. It was taken on a nationwide tour as part of a traveling carnival, and over the next 50 years, the body spent time all across the country before being hung up in a funhouse in California. People began to forget that his body was real and thought it was just a prop. More recently, an assistant to the funhouse tried to lift up the body to move it when the arm broke off. It revealed a real bone inside. Everyone was shocked and disgusted. The thing they thought was a plastic or wax cast of a dead body was actually a real dead man. Immediately after running away in terror, the funhouse staff had the old train robber buried in Oklahoma. But to keep his spirit from haunting anyone, he was interred under a massive cement slab. After all, if you were shot by vigilantes and your body was taken on a tour of the country as a carnival attraction, you'd want revenge too. It makes you wonder how many other plastic or clay casts of human bodies are actually real preserved corpses we just don't know about. Number 8. Irish demons. During the Dark Ages, most of the world was full of people who believed in the supernatural. Superstitions weren't even abnormal, they were just a part of life. That meant people thinking about vampires, werewolves, devils, demons, dragons, angels, mermaids, and other fantastic creatures at all times. People believed that the influence of magic and the divine were all around them. That meant that in the 8th century in Ireland, when people died, sometimes they were suspected of being possessed by Satan. Therefore, recent excavations in the 21st century unearthed skeletons in County Roscommon in Ireland that had stones shoved in their jaws, dislocating them after death. Why would someone jam rocks into the mouths of the dead? It's because they feared that the dead would come back as evil zombies because of the influence of dark magic. The skeletons that were uncovered were lying side by side and were probably related. It's possible that these people were outcasts or suspected of witchcraft, and in order to prevent them from becoming undead and attacking the villagers again, the townsfolk broke their jaws with rocks that would keep them from being able to bite anyone, even after being reanimated. The photographs of these skeletons, with their mouths stuffed with rocks and their skulls crushed, look like something from a scary film. I would honestly prefer to let the skeletons sit undisturbed, but archaeologists really wanted to find out more about these horrifying human remains. Have you ever encountered a human skeleton in real life? What about just a few bones? Or animal bones? Tell me about your run-ins with bones by leaving a comment down below. Then remember to subscribe to The Biggest for more intense videos just like this one. Number 7. Alien skeleton unearthed. In the Atacama Desert of Chile, in one of the driest regions of the world, South American researchers uncovered something unbelievable. It's an alien skeleton, a mere 6 inches tall. Tiny alien remains were found in the desert near a town called La Noria. Originally, scientists thought that the skeleton was thousands of years old. Of course, we would know if aliens landed on Earth more recently, although it's possible that early humans would have mistaken any extraterrestrials for other animals and stayed far away from them. Over the years, different scientific organizations have tried to figure out exactly what was going on with this skeleton, which turned out to be no more than a few decades old. They now claim that it's not an alien, but a strange, mutated human skeleton, which they named Ata. Apparently, Ata suffered an extreme amount of skeletal mutations, including an elongated skull, only 10 ribs instead of 12, and strange angled eye sockets. It's now the theory that this Atacama humanoid is actually just a poor infant who died at birth with extreme birth defects. However, we all know that some kind of convenient explanation is exactly what the governments would want to promote. There are still people investigating further. Whether this is an alien, a human experiment gone wrong, or a strange example of a horrifying mutation, it's worth researching more. After all, we don't see physical specimens like this every day. Number 6. Dr. Segatos' cadavers. An Italian doctor, Girolamo Segato, was obsessed with the human body and what happens to it after death. He spent years investigating techniques for mummifying bodies and preserving the tissues. He found the secret to modern-day human petrification. He actually hardened the soft parts of the body and preserved them forever. Back in the 1820s, this doctor decided to undertake a course of study in the ways ancient Egyptians mummified their dead. He innovated on the methods of the Egyptians and found his own way to maintain the human body with even more terrifying results. His strategy for preservation was never documented, but the bodies that he worked on are still around 200 years later and look like they've been turned to stone. But he was even more creepy and weird than that. Aside from his obsession with preserving human bodies, he was also interested in stealing new cadavers from graves in order to preserve them. He didn't ask permission. He just robbed the graves of people who had just died and went to work. He's one of the closest things we have to a real-life Dr. Frankenstein, but his mastery of the art of human preservation died with him. Now all we have are his disturbing and eerie petrified corpses. Scary. Number 5. Voodoo Market. In the nation of Togo, in West Africa, people still practice ancient traditions related to tribal religions of the Yoruba. This means that voodoo, whose adherents stretch from the Caribbean to West Africa, has a strong presence here. In the voodoo religion, there are items called fetishes, which can be said to have magical properties. In a ritual ceremony, the items are activated and their spiritual powers are turned on. They can be used to pray for certain things. Fetishes, of course, need to be crafted, which means that a market for the items has sprung up. One of them is called the Ako de Sewa Market in the capital city of Lomé. These things are often a bit morbid, full of creepy things like animal skulls or carcasses, little dolls, or products made from the skins of animals. This can mean monkeys, crocodiles, or even bats are preserved and sold here at the largest market for voodoo products in the world. It's a bit unsettling to those who don't practice the faith, but for those who do, they need these items to pray for cures to sickness, or for rain, or to predict the future. If you're looking for a leopard skull or to have your fortune read to you, this is the place to go. If the idea of decaying animals and witch doctors scares you, then stay far, far away from the voodoo market of Togo. Number 4. Cannibal Neanderthals. Of course, we all look at morbid news stories about families perishing in tragic accidents with a disturbing curiosity. But there's nothing quite as horrific as a tale of a family being eaten by cannibals. And yet, that's exactly what scientists uncovered in a cave in northwest Spain. Called El Cidrón, this network of caverns witnessed a grisly murder followed by something even more nauseating. A group of 3 children, 3 teenagers, and 6 adults were all killed about 50,000 years ago at this spot. They were Neanderthals, a species of human-like primates that were our closest genetic relatives in prehistoric times. In fact, many humans nowadays carry a small amount of Neanderthal DNA in their bodies. There was some interbreeding in the early days of our lineage. But Neanderthals were capable of being total brutes and savages. In this case, another group killed and ate these 12 individuals. Their skeletons showed evidence that their bones and skulls were cracked open to consume the flesh inside. How revolting is that? In lean times, it seems that cavemen were willing to go to extreme lengths of depravity to survive. One winter, that meant that a desperate group ate their neighbors. Aren't you glad we live in a society where that doesn't happen anymore? Number 3. Alien skulls in Mexico. In a tiny Mexican village called Onavas, workers were building an irrigation canal when they stumbled upon something totally bizarre and unsettling. That's right, they found the remnants of an ancient cemetery from before Europeans had ever set foot on the continent, and within it were skeletons with strange, cone-shaped skulls. Initial reports suggested that these skulls were consistent with extraterrestrial life, but later scientists claimed that it was not actually proof of any alien activity. Of course, they would say that, as no one wants people to be agitated by something as world-changing as real evidence of aliens. No, the scientists started saying that these pre-Columbian graves showed that ancient Americans practiced cranial binding. They would strap wooden boards to children's skulls and push them to grow in certain ways. The custom is weird and a bit terrifying to look at. Humans with skulls like this seem almost monstrous. Some of the skulls show that the teeth were ground down into unusual shapes, like shark teeth. It seems totally cruel to treat children this way, and terrifying as well. Imagine seeing a child with a cone-shaped, narrow skull and sharp, pointed teeth. They'd look like absolute demon children. Whether these skulls were from external visitors from another planet, or from children whose bodies were broken in order to follow a strange ritual, the presence of these skeletons is both alarming and frightening. Number 2. Mutant Mermaid. In 2018, rumors began swirling about a scary-looking mermaid-like creature that was caught in Indonesia. That's right, fishermen from the islands reported that while they were dragging a net across the sea floor, they found a bizarre animal that had the head of a fish, the torso of a human, arms like a human, and 2 fused together legs. The creature ended with a legitimate tail. Obviously, scientists were skeptical and began claiming that the evidence was fake, and that no such creature had ever been properly documented. By refuting these photographs, they showed that they put no stock in a few pictures scattered around the internet, and needed to inspect the specimen themselves. But imagine this. A nuclear power plant begins dumping waste into a river nearby. It causes some of the fish to develop strange characteristics. Perhaps one of the fish consumes human flesh, and somehow the DNA of the human bones becomes fused with the DNA of the fish. This sounds totally outlandish, right? But it could theoretically happen. Most likely, that kind of radiation would cause a fish to die, but there are still mysteries out there that could explain how the torso, arms, and legs of a man became part of a creature with a fish's head and tail. Based on the way strange experiments are conducted in remote parts of the world, and based on the way companies dump pollution into our streams and rivers, it's possible that this evidence documents something that could really happen. If not now, then in our futures. What do you think? Is something like this mermaid hybrid possible? Even if this particular one is a hoax, mutations do occur in nature all the time. What's next for our planet? Let me know your opinion in the comments section below. Number 1. 100 baby skeletons. This is one of the most horrible, disturbing things a person could ever find, because it raises so many questions about how savage our ancestors really were. That's right, 100 infant skeletons were uncovered in a sewer in the city of Ashkelon, which is on the Mediterranean coast in modern-day Israel. Where were they from? When were they from? What happened here? Apparently, back in Roman times, these babies were buried here underneath a bathhouse. The infants were actually healthy when they were alive, but all died at less than 1 week old. That's right, this was a place where infanticide occurred. According to anthropologists, back in those days, newborn children were not viewed as fully human. The custom of the time dictated that if a baby was unwanted, it was acceptable to leave them to die of exposure. That's what happened with these poor souls, who were discarded at birth. If a child was born to a mother who couldn't possibly care for them, it was deemed acceptable to let the baby perish. Often the parents were low-income laborers who couldn't afford to feed a newborn, and as such, this eerie, spooky scene became a part of everyday life. It's only now, after thousands of years, that we can uncover the evidence of this practice, which seems so barbaric to us today. I wouldn't be surprised if the archaeologists who found this scene are still haunted by nightmares of dead babies to this day. Those were some of the most horrifying discoveries of recent times. Which one had you the most creeped out? Tell me in the comments below. Remember to subscribe to The Biggest if you haven't already, to get even more incredible videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.